Welcome to another episode of the Accidental Badass Podcast, a podcast where I talk to people about the small acts of bravery that make them a badass. I'm Erin Hallstrom, and I am an accidental badass. In this episode, I'm talking to Sarah Zielskis-Walsh about what makes her an adventurous badass. We talk about travel, adventure, overcoming fear, and how to find the adventurous badass inside of you. Enjoy the episode, and don't forget to head to your favorite podcast listening app and rate, review, and subscribe.
Hey, Sarah. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Erin. Hi.
It is so great to have you on, especially one of these early episodes. We have known each other for a long, long time. We go way back.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. Way, way back. That's where copy editing days. So, yeah. Oh, tear.
Tear. Dedicated copy editing positions.
That's right.
Amazing.
That's right. I still go back to and refer back to your all caps Halloween costume, and have been known to do that for myself for a Halloween costume. Yes. But Halloween is not actually what we're here to talk about, although we could probably do a whole episode on costume ideas. So something in all the years that we've known each other, something I have always admired about you is your adventurous spirit, and in particular, all of your travels. And you have traveled. To me, you've always been this traveling badass to whom I've always felt inspired by. So one of my first... honestly, I mean, I know life is not a contest, but yeah, I've seen, because we are connected on social media and we keep in contact with one another. I've seen the places you travel. Like, oh, it's so pretty. I travel vicariously through you sometimes. And and it's just like, you have been to so many places I can't keep track. So I'm going to ask you, off the top of your head, list some of your favorite places you've traveled to in the last 10 to 15 years, whether that's work or personal trips or whatever comes to you.
No, that's a great question, a difficult question. But a couple of the, one place, I wouldn't say this is my favorite place I've ever traveled, but it's a favorite travel experience, it's actually a work trip I took to China. And most of my travels have actually been to places where English is the primary language, believe it or not. It's not that I haven't traveled to, and maybe I should rephrase that, or places where English is familiar or common enough. And China was it was a trip that just pushed me into a different way of viewing the world and just having a totally different understanding of culture. Even when I see, I'm just going to go like a group of Chinese tourists, for example, I just have such an appreciation for how much they have put themselves into a different culture, because I really got to experience on that trip what like a difference between Eastern and Western ways of gesturing even are. So it was. So that's the trip that stands out in my mind, and I actually have a photo of it as one of the photos that I pulled out to decorate my newly set up apartment. So that's what comes to mind immediately, and yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, when you're talking about just. I know I've been to Asia for work a couple of times, and I think it really puts into perspective how, it gives you that sense of empathy and understanding for people who, visit the United States Like, I don't
Yep.
know the language. I don't know every word. I don't know every term of the language. I don't know all of the customs. Yes, I've tried to learn them. Yes,
Right.
I've tried to figure things out. But you feel it has the tendency to make you feel like such a very small goldfish in a very large pond
Yeah.
of people unlike yourself. You're like, okay, I get it now. I get it. Yeah, and I don't know what it is about Asia, or but yeah, I can empathize with you in that sense. But yeah, I've been there. And it's like, wow.
Yeah,
So,
it's humbling too. I'm thinking of a couple other countries I traveled to where no one spoke English, or where I was, people weren't speaking English, and I'm just appreciative to like be in that position where I'm like, I am humbled and I'm at the mercy in a lot of ways of the people around me, and I just need to get comfortable in that and let that sit, and yeah, it's definitely, I enjoy that aspect. I enjoy being a little uncomfortable when I'm traveling. So
right.
So yeah.
Okay. So you, like myself, are a Chicago. You're from Chicago. I know you don't live in Chicago now, and a Chicago suburban woman. And I'm curious to know if, similar like me when you're growing up, was traveling something you grew up with, or was it something you kind of came into more as an adult?
Yeah, great question. So traveling was not something that I grew up with. We took some family vacations to Southwest Michigan and Northern Indiana, and which, so like, an hour and a half away, and then maybe like road tripping a little bit further by car. And so that was travel to me. But funny story, I got I think I caught the travel bug, or the interest in traveling when I was a little girl. It's kind of a weird story. I was a little girl, and I would go over to my aunt's house, and my aunt would subscribe to bridal magazines. And I was like 5, 6, 7, like that age. And I would look at these bridal magazines, and I wasn't as interested in the dresses, although they were like very pretty. I would skip to the honeymoon section and look at all the destinations. And I just gravitated toward a couple things. One, the champagne wedding glass hot tub. I mean, in the Poconos. Like, that was just amazing. Still on my travel list, have not experienced that. But I do remember discovering islands that way, and seeing images and ads for like Moorea and Fiji and the Caribbean, the Bahamas, and just falling in love with that idea of going somewhere so blue, so pretty, so different. And I think that's what like gave me the dream to chase. So I didn't grow up with it. I mean, the first time I was on a plane and the first time my family took a trip outside of the areas that we just described, like locally, was when I was a freshman in high school, and it was in between my freshman and sophomore years actually, and we flew to Washington D.C. And I loved that trip. It actually inspired me. I was like, oh, this whole new world, and inspired me to look for colleges in that area. And I ended up going to Maryland because of that trip.
Right.
When I was in, yeah, and then the next big trip I took after that was also high school, in between, I think it was junior year. Yeah, it was junior year. I was a newspaper dork, and we were up for a national award, and the trip, the conference, the journalism convention, was in San Francisco, and we took a trip out there, and I'm in the Bay Area now, and that trip inspired me to want to move here one day. So, so the first travels that I would consider like actually feeling like I was taking a bigger trip and not just something that was like in my backyard really like helped influence the direction of my life. So, yeah.
Wow. So really quick, I want to circle back to Fiji because that is one of my travel destinations myself. And now I'm starting to wonder, because no one else I've ever met has ever put Fiji on their list. And frankly, whenever I bring it up on my dream, my bucket list for vacations, people are like, the water? Like Fiji water? And it's like, no, Fiji, like the islands.
The island.
Yeah, and like, either I'm watching too much Real Housewives, or maybe I was reading some of the bridal magazines when I was younger too. Yeah. I don't know, but gosh darn it, I'm so glad that I have a friend in Fiji, and maybe this is going to help me figure out where that Fiji wanderlust came from, because I too have wanted to visit. So
it's and I can say Fiji is one of the first islands I went to, actually. I like kept it in my head. See, I guess this is the pattern. I haven't reflected on this, but like I see something and I keep it in my head and then I like make it a reality. I went to Fiji as part of my study abroad to Australia trip. Like I wanted to do something, and I was like, I'm going to take advantage of this. I mean, I was thinking really practically, right? Because I always wanted to go to Fiji or like an island in the South Pacific. And I only had so much money because I was in college, but the exchange rate at the time was amazing from the U.S. to the Australian dollar. And so I bought it through an Australian travel agency, and I was living there. So I was able to, it just was ridiculous. It was a week-long, like full week-long trip. Like we were on not a private island as in like, it was just a very tiny island. There was like a tiny little village, but I think, population 25, something like that. And then the resort, it basically served this like resort that was a small chill resort. Breakfast transfers, like everything for $700. And at the time, like something equivalent in the U.S. would have been like $3,000 or something. I did the math. I compared it, and I was like, wow, this is my like some people chose to go on like do more in Australia, and I did. I definitely like traveled around Australia while I was there for 6 months, but I made one of my ventures Fiji because I had this island dream like that was triggered from when I was little.
Right.
So,
let's talk more about that study abroad, because I remember when we first met, it was several jobs ago for us, and that was something that really stood out to me. Was not only you were like one of the only other people that I had known at the time that had been to Australia, but also you studied abroad there. And I know for me, like, study abroad always seemed too scary, and so when I was in school, now I wish I would have done it, but it is what it is. Talking about study abroad, like take COVID out of things. Let's move yourself back to what prompted you. Where did that adventurous traveling spirit kind of like? Where do you think you remember it really, outside of the going to the Bay Area for the trip? Where did it really start to kind of settle in with you that, hey, I'm brave and adventurous enough. I'm going to study abroad, and we're not just talking 5 hours from home in Ireland. I'm going to Australia.
Yeah. I think it was. I honestly think it was in high school when I that spirit just started to manifest itself. And I actually am friends with quite a lot of friends I have some really good friends from high school to this day. So I can't say, but high school, I was the person who freshman year was researching colleges because I was like, there is more to this. There is more to life than this, and this is uncomfortable and awkward and like, fuck this bullshit. Sorry, maybe you need to edit that out. I want to like see more and do more. And that's when like the seeds just started planting, like, okay, when I'm going to select my college, and I like focused on like figuring out college, but then I just kind of created the goal to study abroad. And because that was my gateway to travel. Like I saw it as my gateway to study and make it part of like earning credit and my like tuition and everything, budget-wise, and see part of the world. And so that's when it really manifested itself. I can't say I chose Maryland because of its study abroad program, but I like made sure that they had like study abroad opportunities. And what I ended up doing was choosing Australia. I think it was, honestly, like a big influence because my mom always talked about wanting to go there. But my thinking was, one, I love the water and I love the ocean, and I just love landscapes, which I trace back to my dad being an artist and always like really appreciating nature and painting nature and taking photos of nature and things like that. So I was interested because of that. And then also like I was looking at it like, I don't want to go to Europe right now because I feel like I'm not into art and I'm not into the type of culture and language experience that I felt like I needed to appreciate going to Europe. I didn't see myself there. So I looked into like, well, one, I went the island direction again, and I was going to do like a study abroad and study like global literature or something like that in Grenada, I think they say it. Never made it there. And for multiple reasons, I just decided, it was like, okay, this is the time to like really do Australia. And so what I did was when I chose Australia, my school didn't have a study abroad program, but I had the ability to like enroll as an international student in an Australian university and then transfer credit. So that's what I did. I went to the University of New South Wales, and I lived in study abroad housing. So there were houses that were in neighborhoods. I chose a neighborhood that was like near the school, but like it was a mile away from the beach. So I kind of had like the best of both worlds, and I chose to live with other international students too. So, and I took Australian studies courses. So like I felt like I was making the most of like learning about what I was doing or where I was. And I made these friendships both like en route to Australia, which on the way I stopped and I spent 17 days backpacking in New Zealand. Didn't know I was like wide-eyed and scared and like, what am I doing? I took the Kiwi Experience backpacking bus where you could get on, get off, but I pretty much stayed on and like followed their itinerary. And on that bus, I made friendships that to this day, I just had my 40th milestone birthday and had a Google Meet call, video chat.
Aww.
And half the people there had a connection to my life in Australia, because even I've kept in touch with even people who I lived with and stuff, and we just become such great friends. So I had Australian friends, and then I had friends who I met there, and then friends who introduced me to who they introduced me to. So it really was formative, and it like checked that box of like learning about a different culture, but having an easy enough time. I mean, Australians speak English, so that was like easier for me. At the same time, I just learned a lot about how like I just learned a lot about race and political correctness. Like I felt like at that time, and I went in 2001, and then I went back after graduation for 4 months, and that was in 2003, I think. Well, 2002. And I just learned that, wow, like even though we're both like Western cultures very, like, Australia was a new country. I think it was celebrating its 150th year at the time. Even though it's so modern and so advanced in so many ways, like, a lot of the attitudes reminded me of, like, what I considered at the time 1950s America. Mm-hmm. And as, even though what I witnessed and what I experienced was just, instead of as much like, and listen, there is racism there, like there, and I'll say, like there is in the U.S., black versus white, so indigenous Australians, and then non-indigenous Australians, but a lot of, like, just differentiating people by their like original country. It's like British people or Canadians or Americans, or like name said country. Just a different way to perceive groups. And we have that here in the U.S., of course, but it was a different flavor. It's its own flavor because it's its own country, and things were just the experience of being in the middle of something, like observing, like, this is not my world. I'm in this world now because I'm living here temporarily, but I'm not part of your culture. And just seeing racism in a different way was really eye-opening. So, like, I appreciated political, quote-unquote, political correctness and the steps that we were taking in America a lot more after that trip, or after both of my trips, actually.
Right. One of the things that when you were talking about the backpacking through New Zealand, which that's just badass squared.
I didn't know it was badass at the time. It was just like, how can I get there and do this thing? I'm just going to figure it out.
It's so funny. Like, when I think of some of the things I've done in my life, especially on my travels, if I look back, I'm like, okay, well, current me would have thought, oh my gosh, like, me now would have been like, what are you? If I were parenting myself, no wonder my mom is I'm in my mid-40s, which, by the way, welcome to the level 40, as I like to call it, or the 40th floor.
Thank you.
Depending on how you I am in my mid-40s, and when I travel, my mom still has I don't care where you are in the world, I want you to check in with me. Post something on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, blah, 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 so I know you're alive. And I find it hilarious. Like, I am in my 40s, Mother. I can take care of myself. But yes, I get it. So all of that said, and kind of all of the shenanigans, it sounds like you potentially and probably have gotten into, and I know myself too, it brings the question to me, are you ever afraid when you travel?
Oh, yeah. I think I might go into a situation, like start a trip or something like that, or choose to do something on the ground when I'm there, like maybe with a little bit more confidence just because of my experience or my interest, I guess. Like, all these little trips that I'm mentioning, like build up, and it gives you more confidence. But it doesn't erase fear. It doesn't erase the oh fuck feeling, or like, oh gosh, what is this going to do? I actually went with my ex to Morocco, and we were in Marrakech, and I felt afraid there as a woman. Like, the entire time, I think I only like walked by myself for like 2 minutes, 5 minutes. It was 5 minutes. And, like just being so different in a woman by yourself, like you have to get used to looks. I don't think I was in danger, to be clear. I wasn't in danger. But it was a bit of a culture shock for me, and that would be something that I would have to practice, And if I decided to travel there by myself, like I'd have to like do a lot more research than I had done. I'd have to like blend in more than I had been. I was following the guidance to, make sure I was, had a high neckline and wasn't showing too much skin and everything, but I'd probably like take more steps to just blend in and like follow the local cultural norms more, and not press that line of being like, okay, like I can push it this far as an American person to stand that, without having to change too much. Like I'd probably do a little bit more,
right,
to fit in. So fear, like that was a time that I was, and I should say, like, I was having coffee in the main square there, and like sitting there with my ex, and like a man came up and grabbed my boob. So that was like with the first 40 minutes of setting foot there. So, and then he walked away, like, and there were people around, and people were like, oh, and I screamed and everything, and so yeah, shit happens sometimes. That's really like, but at the same time, like I knew I was still in this, there were people around, I was in the same place. If I needed to call for help, I could have done it. Like, but it was still uncomfortable, and so when, like I did hang around my husband and make sure to like, we were always together the rest of the trip, and I'm sure that influenced it. But so definitely there are times when I have felt, afraid. Another time, anytime you get sick when you're traveling, there's like that fear of like, oh, I hope this doesn't become something bigger. One time I was in Denmark on a business trip, and I landed, later in the evening, I had dinner, I got up early the next day, and I went for a jog, and I'm running over cobbles, beautiful. There's a gentle mist, and I slip and go down, and I break my ankle, and I went down fast, and at first, you're thinking like, okay, this is a bad sprain. I went down so fast that a woman who was driving by, and the street that I was running alongside was probably about 45 miles an hour. It was a faster street. And she slams on the brakes and pulls over and runs over to me. She told me, and she thankfully spoke a little bit of English. She told me, she's like, I thought you had a heart attack. That's like why I rushed over. And I had to make that decision, like, I can't stand up easily right now at all. I need help, like standing and like to lean on something. I could barely and I really couldn't put pressure on my leg. I need to accept her help. I didn't have a cell phone on me. I think I had my driver's license or passport or something like that, but I didn't have a cell phone on me. And so I realized, in hindsight, okay, maybe, yes, should have kept the cell phone. But even then, you're still afraid. You still have to navigate something. So I accepted her help. I trusted her. I considered her. I was like, she's my guardian angel, and I'm just going to trust. And she drove me to my hotel when I was still thinking that it was a sprain. And that's where I leaned on, because I was there for a conference, so I had a conference hotel. That's where I was like, okay, hotel, please tell me where to go and who to call and what to do. What do I look up? And maybe I did have my cell phone on me. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm like flashing back to certain moments. But I ended up getting in a taxi to the hospital, and the taxi driver actually in Denmark started picking on me for U.S. politics. And I felt really vulnerable and I felt very vulnerable because I was in extreme pain. I wasn't clear-headed at all. And he was actually very angry toward Americans. Was I in danger? I don't think so. He still drove me there, but I had to monitor the conversation. I had to like say like,
right.
I'm in a lot of pain. Can we just talk about something else? Like this
right.
is, I'm not in a good space right now.
Right.
So that was scary. It was, you know, so when you put yourself out there and when you travel, at times something will happen. Does that happen on every trip? Oh my gosh, no. Like the two experiences I just shared, are very, very, very rare, like in all the travel and business trips and everything. But you know, you get through it. Like you get through it just like you get through other stuff in life, and you find out that like the rest of the world is used. What I try to think about is like, I am not the first person to have gone through this or experienced this. Mm-hmm. So there's a way through this. Like I have to like trust that people are good and do what I need to do. And kind of like cry and like freak out and cry like in the moment, like let myself have that when I get back to the hotel room. Or with a kind nurse or something.
I think that's important too. Just that like it's okay to have a mini breakdown. It's okay. You got to keep your composure to a certain extent when it's going on, especially if you're in unfamiliar territory, because, you know, like you're saying, you're in a car, you're going to a hospital. You have to, in addition to just like, hey, hi, I'm in pain and I'm in a strange person's car, I have to be aware of that. I have to be aware of, even like in the United States, even if you were here, like if someone's like, oh, I don't like you because you're a woman, and you have to be very aware of all of that. And I think, I wonder sometimes if maybe sometimes the fear people may have of traveling outside of their comfort zone is, oh, I don't know how I would handle that if it happened. Mm-hmm. And I like the context you put it in. It's like, well, we deal with stuff like this, maybe not the same exact way. So we deal with things like this every day. So every day you're probably confronted with, well, there's someone who may not be my world's biggest fan. Guess what? I still figure out a way to deal with them. It's on a much smaller scale, but
You have to trust yourself that you're going to get through it just like you get through other things. And the reason why we get afraid is because it's hard to imagine a situation like that, right? Because it is difficult being in a foreign country where, you know, you have to navigate. I mean, heck, they don't have 911 there. Like, I had to figure, and it turns out in Denmark, you know, or at least in Aarhus, which is where I was, the city that I was. And, like, you have to call the hospital and let them know you're coming in. Like, I had to learn that. And
oh, my gosh.
But you figure, you ask, I mean, that's another thing where it's like you have to be vulnerable and ask questions and, like, pick and choose how much information you share and everything. And people who are helping you understand, like, they empathize. They, you know, if you find out that somebody's visiting from some out of town or for somewhere else, like, you want to help them too, and you just have to rely on like people being able to do that for you.
Yeah, exactly. So my one thing I wanted to ask you, just while you can't plan for emergencies, not really, what kind of planning do you do when you're traveling for work, personal? Think back to before 2020, obviously, with that.
Totally.
What kind of planning do you typically do?
Yeah, no, good question. Well, I make sure to carry ID with me and make sure that I have insurance and like, you know, work trips are a little, like when I was on that work trip where I broke my ankle, I had a number to call to like and I let like my manager know and everything. I guess like what I do is I have a network around me. Like I just have people who I trust and like a point of contact. So when I travel by myself, for example, well, here, I'll talk hiking. When I go hiking nearby, if I'm going to go hiking on a trail by myself and it's going to be lengthy and it's going to be, maybe it's not a Saturday or Sunday when I know a lot of people are going to be around, for example, or lengthy regardless. I have a friend who I let know what trail I'm doing and about when I'm going to leave. I text him and I let him know, and I trust him. He's like a hiker too, and he's very responsible and would know like exactly who to call. Like he knows how to navigate and think about that stuff. And I'm like, okay, if you don't hear from me by the end of the day or after like 6 hours or something, or like this will be a 3-hour hike, if you don't hear from me in like 6 hours or by the evening, maybe start to take action. And that gives me peace of mind too that somebody else is looking out for me, checking it. So it's not like, and not that your mom can't do that and everything, but like it's, there's peace of mind knowing you're connected to somebody else. So I was at an Airbnb recently and went on a hike and did some other trips, and I was friendly with the host and joked and said like, okay, like I'm joking, but I'm not. I'm going to have like a random itinerary today, but if I'm not back, if you don't see my car late tonight, call the authorities.
Yeah.
Wink, wink, nod, nod. But it was just another way to reach out. And I've been more formal when I've said it to you, like, hey, can I let you know when I'm leaving and when I plan to come back tomorrow so that you can just like look out. And people totally get it. They're like I've never had anybody not be like empathetic about it. So, and helpful.
I know something, I can't remember what self-defense workshop thingamabobber in my last, and
that's good too.
However, like, I can't remember where I heard this, which one of them I heard this, but something that I've started doing is do a social media either post, check-in, or picture when you're going to hike somewhere, when you're going to do it. And I remember in the beginning kind of feeling like, oh, it's like a humble brag, like, look at me, I'm checking in that I'm doing a hike at the blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no.
It's documentation.
It's documentation. If no one hears from me, you know that I checked in at such and such a place at such and such a time. And then I remember, going back in, like, when I'd be done, like, commenting. And sometimes if everything was fine, sometimes I would take the post down. But I remember at that time learning that, like, hey, I check in, do something on a social network somewhere. At the time, it was predominantly Facebook, so that at least the people who are within your circle know where you're at, where you've been, what you're doing. I realize some people have safety and security concerns and may not be as apt to do that, and I think similarly I've done.
It's a connection point. Somebody else knows.
Yeah,
like somebody else knows what I'm doing, and I've documented it somewhere.
Yeah. So, because I think, women like us who like to be adventurous and don't always want to do something, like wait for someone else to have the time, the energy, the wherewithal, whatever, to go hike or do something with us. It's like, all right, I can either wait or I can do this by myself. But if I do this by myself, I need to, like, all right, someone check for me, please. So yeah, I think it's great.
Good question.
I just have a couple more questions for you. And this next one, in that same vein, being women who travel on our own sometimes. Feel free to answer this if you want to. If you don't, though, from a safety standpoint, I understand that too. Do you have, where are you thinking you want to go next, to travel to next?
Yeah.
After, whether it be after COVID, once we can visit other places, or within the United States.
That is a great question, because I'm still letting go of my travel ideas that I had lined up. I was going to do Vietnam and Cambodia for a couple of weeks in April, and then via work I had like potentially Lisbon and Munich on the list, and then I back to New York City and everything, and like I had like little plans around that, and I'm letting go of that. I've let go. What did I say? I have let go of those dreams. Maybe in the future. And as I'm reflecting, what I'm realizing is that I've shifted to thinking more about what's local. There's this phrase that I heard, like 2020 is California for Californians because of the pandemic. Yeah. And so I've really tried to lean in on that, whether it's in the spirit of vacation, like I want to take a couple days off, or what I also call my self-preservation tour, which is I need to get out now. Like I need to get away from my work from home apartment, living by myself, and see something different. I will drive to wherever there's an Airbnb that meets my criteria for price, budget, kitchen, being near green space. And the answer is I want to go to so many places. I've stopped like planning. I don't have like the list in mind anymore.
Right.
I realize, because I just have so many like ideas. I had a National Geographic Traveler magazine laying around about the best places to travel, and I think it was like from January or something. And I actually threw it out the other day because I just realized like the world is going to be so different, and like the status of cities and safety and like everything, that I didn't want to like get my hopes up about any one place. So that's my practical approach that I'm taking right now. But I do have dreams of more island time. I want to go back to the South Pacific for sure. And I do, I do think of like Portugal and Croatia and some of the places that I've been like hearing about, and I haven't made it to yet.
Dubrovnik's on my list. That's one of those. Fiji, Maldives Visitors Bureau, if you're listening, we will. I'm packing myself. Sarah and I will gladly do the single woman's guides to
happily.
Sign
me up.
We are writers. We will happily write about it. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, it's great.
We have journalism.
I know, it's like send me them.
We can write.
Yeah. Send us to Vanuatu. Send us to the Cook Islands. Send us to all the places.
Yes, we'll podcast from there. We will. Okay.
Yeah. What about you? Like, what's your place? What's number one on your list for when you could travel again?
My top place, I actually probably could travel to now, and was supposed to travel. The long goal was to have accomplished this month, but I want to hike the Grand Canyon. That's my. I've never
been there.
Yeah, I've never been to the Grand Canyon. Of all the things, you and I very similar that way. I've been to a lot of places in the world, And not that I don't like
not the Grand Canyon
backyard. Yeah, it's like I've never been to the Grand Canyon, and the more I see pictures of it, the more I am inspired and am in awe of it. And, I think one of the things for me, one of my criteria before I leave this earth is I want to be awe-inspired. I want to see something that takes my breath away. And while I've seen beautiful things, from what I see and hear about pictures of the Grand Canyon, it is magnificent and takes your breath away. So my goal
majestic
on in the year. Yeah, majestic. I feel that way when you're like at a mountain range. That's the closest thing, but I kind of want to be on top looking out. And so early on in the year, I got it, probably late last year, got it in my head like, okay, in September, October, I'm going to go to the Grand Canyon, and I'm going to do this. It was going to be part of this whole self-discovery mission to, like, my Eat, Pray, Love meets Wild tour. So I wanted, I wrote my book in the first half of the year, and then the second half I wanted to hike and really, really package up that peace that I was hoping to find within myself. So it's like I took two memoirs and was going to merge them into one.
That's amazing.
And so the Grand Canyon was and still remains on my list. It is the most, dare I say, local, just because it's not outside the U.S. It is the most local thing that I want to get to. I think not that we have travel restrictions necessarily within the United States, and we do to an extent, but I wouldn't feel comfortable going now, going and doing it now. So I think I'm playing more like the long game of like, okay, really figure out, the best time of the year to go, have options. The add-on now is that my mom has always wanted to see Sedona. It's, for me, I've wanted to see the Grand Canyon. She's always wanted to see Sedona. So we decided we were going to package our trip and do a mother-daughter trip, probably for a long weekend, and rent the car. She's going to cross Sedona off the list and finally see it. And then she's like, I'm not going to hike the Grand Canyon, but I'll drop you off. You do what you want to do. And I'll do my thing. You go do your thing. And so I think trying to find the time, the long weekend, the hotel, all that stuff. So that's the closest externally. For as much as my name means it, I have never been to Ireland, so that is probably outside of the U.S. That is probably the one that I would love to go to. But you know what?
I love it.
I believe I will get there. I know
you will get there.
Yeah, I will.
This isn't going to last forever, and I think that like something that one of the reasons why I don't have like specific places in mind is because I'm often guided by what type of experience I need, right? So like,
right, exactly.
I don't know if when things start to open up, if I'm going to want to, honestly, like just pick a beautiful resort with the ocean somewhere and make that my escape. I don't know if I'm going to want to like backpack and be in the wilderness for a while. Will I want to experience like a European city, a tiny European city or something, or tiny culture, I should say. Like at this point, I'm blending things. I'm blending a city with like something small and quaint in my head. European, right? Like, am I going to want to go chase that? It'll be interesting to see like what we're craving and what our needs are. So I guess my strategy now is like stay local and take those road trips all within driving distance, provided, I'm going to sound depressing, provided they're not on fire right now. Which is legit, like, reason to, when I can't travel and I don't have the ability to travel, I sometimes get anxiety too. Like if I don't feel like I have that outlet. So with the wildfires and all the directions surrounding the Bay Area, in addition to anxiety and like worry and concern about all the issues from people's well-being and communities to land and animals and climate and all that, there's something to be said about if you have an adventurous spirit and you rely on experiencing new things or getting away, teasing your senses in different ways, and that's taken away, or the option is taken away. Even if you're not doing it, the option, it really does like have an effect on like mental health and stuff. So I just keep on remembering, I was like, we're going to get through this. And just like we're morphing and I'm morphing and changing the type of travel mindset that I have, like travel looks very different for me today, but I'm finding a way to do it. We'll morph again.
Yeah.
We'll morph again. So
very adaptable.
We'll get there. You're going to get there. Yeah. Thank you. You too. Yeah. You got to keep doing it.
That's right. For now, I just have the Grand Canyon wallpapered all over, like my computer, my phone. It's I'm manifesting it. It's not like it's going
inspirational.
Anywhere.
Exactly.
That's right. Okay, so I have one last question for you.
Okay. Perfect.
This might be a long one in terms of response. So. Last question is, any tips or takeaways you can give to listeners who want to be more adventurous with their travel but aren't sure how to get started?
Yeah. I would suggest starting small. So if you have an idea, pick somewhere, someplace, something that you've been interested in experiencing, a place that you want to go, and have it be easier to accomplish, not complicated, I guess. So, maybe it's driving for 4 hours to a small town you haven't checked out. You've been curious about, but haven't really had the reason to go. Use that as like your baby step to get you to the next bigger thing, like next sizable travel experience, and just keep building up and getting more comfortable. That would be my number one tip. It's okay to start small. Just start experimenting with what you're comfortable with, and go from there.
Very good. I like that. I think, like with everything, you just have to start. Don't be scared. Just get started.
Yep. And it's fair. Like what I would say to people is like give yourself a break for like being overwhelmed by like taking a trip by yourself to a foreign country or for multiple weeks or whatever it might be. Like it's okay to feel overwhelmed.
Right.
Just see if you could start doing the work to like, make it a goal down the road, and then in the meantime, take the little trip.
Right.
You'll build up to it.
I think people often underestimate the importance of baby steps when it comes to, I want to go do a trip like this. Okay, well, go. I know I've offered the advice to people close to me. If they're like, oh, yeah, I want to do a weekend away at such and such a town. It's like, okay, well, can you spend a day not, just being spontaneous? Oh, yeah, I want to go on a trip and be spontaneous. Okay, can you go an hour?
Yeah.
And be spontaneous. Try a day. Can you, on a Saturday, just not go somewhere? Or just get in the car and travel somewhere? And, to that point, it's like, okay, we'll start small. If you want to go to the other side of the country, well, maybe travel a couple of hours within your own state and see how comfortable you are. And I like those small baby steps. But at the same time, have those goals. Do your research on if it's someplace big you want to visit. I think, to the point of what you said in the beginning and what we both said, be confident in your travel ability, that
Right.
You've survived everything that's come at you so far in life, and you know yourself. And if you are confident in yourself, you will be confident in your travels. So,
good summary, Erin.
Wow,
good summary. Thanks for that.
I listened. Well, on that note, thank you so much for spending some time with me talking about your travel badassery. Appreciate it so much, and so glad that we have gotten to know each other over the years and kept in touch and get to watch each other's travels still. I, by the way, do remember when you broke your ankle in Denmark, and I remember being like, oh, I would die if that happened to me. So that was a memory that stuck out to me, and it didn't even happen to me. But yes, thank you so much for spending time with me, and I appreciate so much that you were on the Accidental Badass podcast.
Well, it has been my pleasure, Erin. Thank you so much for the conversation. It was fun, and I hope thank you for choosing that topic, because I think that it's something that really resonates with people, and I hope that this can help people be more confident in themselves and be the surprise accidental badass that they are.
Right. And all of those islands that we were talking about, if you're listening, we are here.
We'll go there.
We're here. To visit. Yeah, we're here.
Done and done.
We write, we are articulate, and we are fun, fabulous 40-something females. I mean, we are your target
for sure. We'll take a COVID test too. We'll do it.
That's right.
We'll be safe.
That's right. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening to another episode of The Accidental Badass.